Okay, welcome to today's podcast on photosynthesis. I'm going to start with a quick animation here, and then I'll just bring you to my own version of the Cornell style notes that you should be taking in your notebook. So if you want to wait, you can wait to take the notes. I'll show you how I'm going to set mine up, but we're going to go over, and I'm just going to show you this little animation here so you can get a big picture idea of photosynthesis. So obviously here we're starting with the leaf, okay, because of course plants can do photosynthesis, but so can other organisms like algae and bacteria. And so remember, we just like to say autotrophs or producers can do photosynthesis. And but if it is a plant, okay, it's going to be occurring in the leaf, which is an organ. So just like we talked about having specialized cells. Okay, let's look at the leaf here. Okay, we can zoom in on the leaf, and what you notice is, just like our skin and our liver and whatever blood cells, whatever cells you looked at under the microscope, that plants also have specialized cells. And so this is a leaf, and it has specialized cells. It has different layers, which I believe you're going to probably look at under the microscope yourself next class. So there's the cuticle, which is a waxy layer on top, and then there's some epidermis, which is like the skin, and then there's layers here called the mesophyll that does mostly the photosynthesis. So notice how those cells are jam-packed in here with lots of chloroplast to do photosynthesis. There's a spongy layer, which isn't as packed because this is where the air is going to be able to come in and out right out of this hole here called the stomata is where the air comes in and out of the leaf. And then over here we call this the vein, sometimes the vascular bundle. The xylem is where the water comes in and out, and the phloem is what carries the sugar. So we're going to zoom in on the palisade layer, okay, and again, this is just your typical plant cell: nucleus, extra large vacuole for storing water, cytoplasm, cell wall, and of course the chloroplast, which is what we'll zoom in on now. So here's a picture of a chloroplast. If you cut it open, you should see all these stacks on the inside. These stacks are called thylakoids, and the space around them is called the stroma. Okay, so we'll zoom in, and we're going to go right into one of the thylakoids. Okay, we're actually going into the thylakoid membrane.
Thylakoid inner membrane, showing 5 specific points.
Okay. So this is the thylakoid of the chloroplast, which is where the photosynthesis is going to happen. So I'm going to just show you a few parts, and then we're going to watch the whole thing, and your mind is going to be boggled, and that's okay. You don't need to know all these steps, but just to know that it's a very complex process. Okay, so watch this. The little yellow arrow, that's the sunlight coming in. Okay, and here you just notice in the bottom is some water coming in. Watch what happens to this water molecule. So H2O, right? Okay, notice the little Mickey Mouse ears, the H's, they pop off, right? They get broken off of the oxygen, and then oxygen gets released, and that's where the oxygen comes from that we breathe. So in this first this first part of photosynthesis, which is called the light-dependent reaction, okay, the water gets split, and that's where we get our oxygen from. Okay, these little glowy things here, those are the electrons, and that's what's going to create all the energy from the sunlight. So the sunlight strikes here, it's absorbed by chlorophyll, which is the pigment in the chloroplast that absorbs the sunlight. And now I'm just going to play the whole thing and just let you get confused for a minute, and that's okay. So in photosynthesis, this is a really complex reaction. Lots of things going on, but what you should notice again, okay, so over here we have the water getting split. We get sunlight coming in 2 times, once over here, Okay, but what you should notice in the last part over here, okay, is right there, bam. You see that? That ATP got generated. Okay, and ATP is how we're going to temporarily store our energy. Okay, so that's the light reaction of photosynthesis. And so what you notice there, what happened is that the light was absorbed by the chlorophyll, the water was broken, and we generated some ATP and another molecule called NADPH. And those molecules are then used for the second part, which is called the Calvin cycle. And so we'll just go to the notes sheet now. So I'm going to pull up a Word document where I basically typed up the notes. And so you're going to set this up Cornell style in your notebook. Whatever the next right-hand page is, I'll try to look that up and find out. But okay, so title of the notes, Photosynthesis Notes. Okay, set up your page, left hand, right hand. So you might want to take a minute, set up your page, and hit pause. Okay, but I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to just take my highlighter tool and highlight what I would highlight. So here we go. Photosynthesis, a process which occurs in autotrophs or producers. Same thing. Word means the same thing. Remember, autotroph literally means to self-feed. Can be done, as I said, by plants, algae, or bacteria. Occurs in the chloroplast of eukaryotic cells, and or specifically in the leaf. There we go. So the definition of photosynthesis is a conversion, or it converts light energy into chemical energy, which is the food. There's two major parts. One's called the light-dependent reaction, which is what we just watched in the animation, and the second part's called the Calvin cycle, which I don't have an animation of, so we're just going to talk about it. So in that first light-dependent reaction, three things happened that we need to know about. Number one, the chlorophyll, which is a pigment, absorbed the sunlight. Now, hopefully you do remember something about pigments and the light spectrum. If you remember Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, blue, and violet. Did I say that right? That is the light spectrum. Okay, so chlorophyll is a pigment. It's especially good at absorbing red and blue light, and it reflects the green light, which is why it looks green. Okay, that's why plants look green, is because chlorophyll reflects the green light. Okay, so it absorbs the red and the blue, reflects the green. Okay, the water got split into hydrogen ions, its electrons, and the oxygen, which got released. So the oxygen from this reaction gets released, and that's what we breathe. Okay, and then the energy is temporarily stored in ATP. Right, that's our key molecule. So our energy gets stored in ATP. Okay, now we're going to move on to the Calvin cycle, which again I don't have animation, so let's just talk about the Calvin cycle. Is then going to just take the hydrogen ions from the water, the electrons from the water, and combine them with carbon dioxide and the energy from the ATP, which will create the glucose. That leaves us with the overall equation for photosynthesis being CO2 plus H2O with light energy yields glucose plus oxygen. And we're going to work on balancing that equation the next time. Okay, again, feel free to hit pause, but I'm just going to show you the last part here. Can I do it? Yeah, there we go. So you should draw this picture of a chloroplast in your notes. Okay, notice, all right, we've got the stack of the thylakoids here, which is where the light-dependent reaction occurs. So we have the sunlight coming in, water coming in, water gets split, which creates the oxygen that we breathe, so that's the output there. Okay, the ATP temporarily stores the energy. Okay, then the carbon dioxide combines with the hydrogen. That's what I'm missing here. If you can, in your picture right here, draw an arrow coming over from the light-dependent reaction over to the Calvin cycle that says hydrogen ions. So carbon dioxide plus hydrogen plus the energy from ATP all get combined in the Calvin cycle, which is basically a steps of a series of chemical reactions that create the glucose. And that's photosynthesis. And that's the end for today. We will talk about this more in class next time.